Hi there, it's Winston here, and we are on the app development course. So in today's class, we'll be looking at functions. So explore what functions are and why we need them. Now, one of the major reasons why we need functions is it improves our code reusability and readability. Before then, a function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific task within an application. A reusable block of code that performs a specific task within an application. So like I said earlier, all these are just some fundamental concepts in programming. So one of the most important ones is functions because we use it a lot and we have already studied it without us knowing. So another thing also, it helps in modular programming by breaking tasks into smaller parts, and we can take inputs which are also called parameters and return outputs which are called values. Now let's quickly look at what these guys are in real life, in real code. So this is the code that we had the last time. So yeah, we've done lots of things, but there are some things said that are actually functions, right? For example, this void main is a function, so nobody will tell you. But only will tell you that it's a function. Yeah. So let's actually investigate what these functions are, right? So I'm actually going to list all these guys. So to start up, we say void main, which comes as this, and yeah. So now this void main is even a function. Is a function, right? And the previous code that we had, that's where we had all these guys written out here. So if you notice something about this code, immediately we click run, all the print statements start executing, right? We start declaring variables and all of that, so those codes start running. Now, if you are using a function, those codes, we will write the code, we can put the whole print statement, but if you put that print statement inside a function, it's not going to print until we call that function, right? So either in programming we call it calling a function or invoking a function. I think invoking sounds more serious. So I'll use call. So until we call that function. For example, when users are registering on your app, you've already written the code that will store their details. But that code will not run, like it won't start storing their details until they click on that register button. This is to say the function that is meant to store their details, right, will be attached to that button. So when you click that button, then the code will start running. That's the code that would actually store their details on your database and all of that stuff. So that's the idea about functions. That's the same thing that happens here. So that's how these codes are running without us calling them. Now, a function is very simple. Declaring a function, the first thing you need is a return type. A return type. So for now, let's pretend our return type will be void. So when you say return type is void, it means it's not meant to return anything. The next is the name of the function. Now, the same naming conventions we use for the variables also applies for the function, except that the functions will proceed with a bracket, a normal bracket. There's also the name of the function, you put a bracket. Like you see the main there. So after we say void main, right? So the main is also a function, but that one is like an inbuilt function. It's an inbuilt function for that, you get. So whatever function I want to do here. So let's say this function will be called greets or greetings. Right? So if you look at it carefully, you notice it looks similar to the main. Right. So now this function is called greetings. That's the name of the function. Now in between these curly brackets, that's where we actually specify whatever we want this function to do. Now remember that a function is a block of code that performs a particular task within an application. So now that your function that you're going to create, you will now decide what should this function do. Right. In our case now we're calling this function greetings. So ideally we can say this function is meant to greet whoever is using the application. And how do we greet? Just print hello world. Hello world. So once we do this, right, and we run our code, you notice something. Nothing will actually happen. Even if you wait for 4 years, nothing will happen. That hello world will not show. Although we have that hello world written out there, but it will not show. Remember I told you the code inside a function will not run until you call the function. You get. Now, how do you call the function? It's very simple. So after you've declared the function, right? So this whole curly bracket, see, it starts here. Very important. Curly brackets are very important in programming. So it starts at the top here and ends here. Here. Right? So after we have declared the function, we can now come down here, maybe somewhere here or anywhere, and call the function. And how do we call the function? By just calling the function, by writing the name of the function followed by the curly brackets. Written, right? So now when we run this function, it will now go ahead and print hello world on the screen. So that's our function. So whatever code you put in the function will not run until you call that function. The calling is very important. So if you write lots of code and you don't call the function, it's not going to work. Now, remember I told you a function is basically, the declaration starts with the return type, right? So after the return type, name of the function. Now, the return type here is specifying to be void. That means it's not meant to return any value at all. Whereas in some cases, you might say, okay, this function should actually return a value. Let's say an int. Now I want to call this function sum. So what is it saying here? Right. So it's showing an error now because they have not returned anything. So for our sum, we can say let int num1 be equal to 40, then int num2 be equal to 30. Now I can now say return num1 plus num2. Right. So this plus here is a normal plus. So I've looked at this in the previous class. But this is what is called the arithmetic, one of the arithmetic operators. So plus means plus, right? And divide is represented as / and times is represented as asterisk. I think that's like the major one, plus, and minus is represented as minus, right? So now you can decide whatever your function should do. So I'm calling this function sum. Remember, just like your variable names can answer anything, right? Your functions can also answer anything. That's it. But more importantly, you should not have space in between. You should not start with a number. You can use camel casing, and it should be descriptive. Now, because it's descriptive, that's why I'm calling it sum, right? So me calling it sum is not the reason why I'm using plus. So I'm just trying to make it descriptive. So this function is meant to sum numbers. Basically, two numbers are already declared inside, which is 40 and 30, right? So that's why I'm calling it sum. Now, very quick. This function has been declared, and you know, without calling this function, nothing would work. But even if I call this function, nothing will still work. You might ask me why. Why is that? There is no print statement there. So I'm only returning a number, num1 plus num2. I do not say print num1 plus num2, I'm just returning it. So I could have said, okay, print num1 plus num2 in the, what's it called? I could go ahead and say this. Sum, let me make it int plus, in sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Then since they both mean the same thing, I can just return sum. Alright, so now I'm going to print sum here so it shows. So I run this code. Now I actually see the sum of 40 and 30, which is 70. Right? Now the return statement returns sum. For this level, you don't need to bother much about it. Right? But basically, when a function has a return value, when it returns something, that function can be passed as a value to another variable. Think about it again. If a function has a return value, it's actually returning something, right? So that function can be passed as a value to a variable. So I can come out and say our numbers are equal to some called the function. But if you don't get it, don't bother yourself much about it, right? It doesn't get much. But now the most important thing is whenever a function is specifying a return state, like specifying what something should be returned, make sure there's a return statement at the end, which would correlate with the type. So yeah, I'm saying int as the return type of this function. That's why I must return a variable that has a type of int. If I'm returning a variable that has a type of double, right, it won't work. So we'll actually look at this a whole lot more when we come to Flutter. Now, sum has a type of double, so if I'm returning sum, it's not going to work because it has a type of double. That's the most important thing. So if your function has a return type, make sure you are returning something. If you don't return something, it should tell you it's expecting to return something. That's what to actually say. After some time, the error come up here. So the body might complete normally, causing not to be returned, but return something. So ideally, saying this function is meant to return a variable that has or the value of a type of int, but it is not. So that's why it's wrong. So if your function is not going to return anything, you can just specify it as void. Alright, so that way everybody knows that I'm not expecting anything in return. So that's it. So yeah. So now when I call my function sum, it prints out this guy, which is hello world. Sorry, which is 17. Very cool. Now there's a question that is going on in your head right now. You might be asking, so what if I want to change the number? Or maybe it's not 40 and 30 you want, maybe it's 100 and 200. Well, now for this part of the class, we've not started accepting inputs from users. So this is not what we're actually going to do if we really want to do it, right? So ideally, we're meant to link this whole code to a form, whereby the user inputs the first number, inputs the second number, and clicks on sum, brings out the results you get. But now we are not working on form, so we're just specifying the values ourselves, you get. So that's how it works. Now, let's move back to this function called greetings, right? There's another concept that is called parameters. Now, functions accept parameters. Now, what are parameters? Now, if you see a function as a pipeline, right? Basically, inside that pipeline, lots of processing goes on, lots of codes goes on, right? So these functions can also accept data before when they are being called. What do I mean? Now, I could decide to create a function that will say greet me, right? And for it to greet me, I will be specifying my name, right? I'll be specifying my name inside this bracket. Please pay close attention. Now this name here, I'm going to say, let me make it a string so you get the point here. So it will be expecting a variable of a type of string. Now inside my function, now, just like this first one, just saying hello world. I use my next function, I would want to make it more, what's that word now? More personalized. So I could say this one now will be saying hello and my name. Yeah. Okay. So now let me go over this code again. So the function now is called greetName. And inside this bracket, unlike the first one that was empty, this one actually has string name. And if you're familiar with it, if you went to the second class, realize that this name is a variable that's a type of string, right? So that means it's going to expect a value when we are calling it. Now I'm printing hello name, right? So this means that whatever value is here, if I specify my name here, when I call the function, if I'm calling the function, I specify a name. That's the name that will show you. So it will be hello. If I say it will be hello Winston, if it's Paul, it will be hello Paul, but still the same function. Now this part here that I used $sign before writing the name of the variable, it's called concatenation. Concatenation. Now what is concatenation? I'm trying to put a variable inside a string. I'm trying to join them together. A variable and a string, trying to put them together. So that's what it's called concatenation. Because without putting this $, if I just say hello name here, right? So what will actually be printed out is just hello name. But with this $sign, it's known that okay, name is a variable. So whatever the name, whatever name was supplied, that name should be here. You get the point. So now let's go ahead and call this function. You already know to call the function, just call greetName. Now you won't keep the bracket empty, right? If you try leaving the bracket empty, it will tell you one fine error. to say one positional argument expected by greet me but 0 found. Now what this means is when I was declaring this function, I was saying, okay, for you to call this function, you must specify the name. Just like in your ATM machine, for you to actually withdraw, you must specify the amount you want to withdraw. So for me to call this function called greet me, you must specify the name. Now, these parameters or arguments, you can see, I can further explain it in the use of ATM machines, right? So actually, in the ATM machine, there is a serious coding going on, and there are also lots of functions, right? So now there's a function called withdraw, and for that function to work, you need to specify the amount you want to withdraw. Does that make sense now? So the function is the withdraw, right? But when you want to withdraw, you need to specify the amount and maybe some other things like your PIN and all of that, right? So that's the same thing that's happening here. So there's this function that we declared called greet me, but for this function to work, I must specify the name that we are greeting. Who am I greeting? You get? That's how parameters and arguments work. So in this level, just take it that parameters and arguments mean the same thing. In a more advanced level, they are similar but not the same. But doesn't really matter. So if I'm calling greet me, I can now specify my name. I can specify Paul. So now greet me, and I'm saying Paul. So what I'm expecting is to say hello Paul, right? So that's very, very easy and straightforward. It says hello Paul. Now, if I want my code to greet someone else, I'll say greet me. What am I greeting this time? Let me say Sarah. Now, if I run this code, it's going to say hello Paul, hello Sarah, right? So you see the point of what's it called now? Of functions. Functions are reusable. Now, this function is very simple, just for greetings. Now, imagine the function is something like what I told you about withdraw, right? Or it could be something like transfer or something else. So now if you create a function, the code is actually reusable, just like what you have seen. So with the same code, I'm using to greet two different people. Now, this code could be more complex than just greeting. You get the point now, right? So it could mean that, okay, it's not greeting, you should be like, okay, send a mail to this person, or do this, or do that, or register this person, or register that person. So it could be more complex than just what we've done. The main concept there is that the code is reusable, right? And another code also, it's easy to maintain. This means that if I want to change my greeting, it should not just be saying hello name. It should be more expressive. Say hi name. I can say hope you are having a nice day, right? So now you see this hi name, hope you're having a nice day. So once I do this, it will change for those two persons I've already greeted. So I do not change to hi Paul, I hope you're having a nice day, hi. Get the point now. So this means that this code is easy to maintain because I just change it once and it's going to reflect everywhere that I've called the function. Now I want you to picture this. If you are creating an actual application, you have lots of code, lots of files, a whole bunch of other stuff. So making your code reusable and easy to maintain is going to save you lots of problems. Yes, because coding is not just about writing code. There's also a part that talks about maintaining the code. So the codes have already been written. How do you now maintain it? That's another factor I need to put into consideration when writing your code. So that's why we use things like functions. So if you have a particular code that we know we want to use in like 500 different places in the application, we just declare it once, call it whatever I want to call it. That way, whenever we make change here, it appears everywhere and everybody is happy. Now, going back to the code we've been writing so far, if you observe, you'll notice that that statement print is also a function. Yes, print is also a function, but now print is an inbuilt function, which means it has already been declared by that, and we cannot touch it. Now, what this means is that aside print, we also have other inbuilt functions. There are so many used for different things. Now, I want to backpedal and get the point. This means I cannot create another function called print. It will be clashing, right? Same way I cannot call a variable int because int is already being used. Now this is what we call reserved keywords. There are some keywords that have been reserved with me. There's some keywords, there are some words that have been reserved. This means that you cannot name your variable that, or you cannot call it that. I cannot create a function and give it that name. You cannot create a function and call it int. It's already been reserved. You cannot create a function and call it sprint. It's already been reserved. So there are lots of other things. Then lastly, about functions. Functions can accept more than one parameter. So now you're only specifying the name. I can go ahead and say, okay, aside the name, I can tell it, okay, specify the location or the country, right? Country is also a string. So hope you're having a nice day. I could change this code to hi, so person, how is the weather at the country name? Maybe add a question mark. Right now, this is very, very interesting because now I've changed my functions from accepting just one parameter to accepting two parameters. This means everywhere that I've called that function, I need to also specify two parameters because now it needs two parameters to work. It's that simple. It's not as complex as you're hearing it. You declared it with two parameters. It means when you're calling it, you have to call it with two parameters. So not just the name now. So say Paul is calling from Nigeria. Then Sarah is coming in from Egypt. And why it was Egypt for. You get the point. So now our functions are now being called with two different parameters. So when running the code, you'll see it comes out very, very clean. Hi Paul, how's the weather at Nigeria? Hi Sarah, how's the weather at Egypt? What does this tell you? So in a nutshell now, all those apps that you have been using, so this is how it's actually done in a way. So you feel like, okay, they actually know you, or whatever you're seeing on your app is unique to you. It's not. It's the same thing, that the same code works for everybody, right? So all you do is just specify the name. Like some app when you log in, you see your name somewhere. So actually there's a function that gets your name from wherever it is stored and shows it to you and tells you whatever it wants to tell you. Or sometimes you receive some emails from some apps and they just like, hi, you feel like they know you or they wrote a note specifically for you. They did not. It's just a function that would impute your name there and make it look more personalized. So in the next class, we'll be looking at Flutter. So now we've just been playing around with that part. So in the next class, I'll actually be creating a Flutter application and start exploring what Flutter is. So I'm guessing you should join the next class because it's going to be way more interesting than this. So it's now time for us to actually play with the app code itself. So until then, bye for now. I remain Winston Okatubo.